This is my workplace today for just a little bit. Position myself by an outside window, and what I'm trying to do here is shoot some video of macro shots of samples that I brought back with me from a trip to Kenya earlier this year. Oh, hello, Opal. This is Opal. And what I wanted to do is look at the different grades of Kenya coffee that come, in some cases here, from the same outturn. An outturn is the raw coffee in parchment, comes into the mill and gets sorted and graded and results in different grades, and not all of them are good, and that's actually sort of important, not just because every so often you get a single defect bean in a high quality grade. Yes? Can I help you? Hello? Opal likes to be close. But also because the value of those lower grade coffees is actually really important to the total sort of formula. And my thinking on that's changed. It's not just simply that poorer grades of coffee are something that just somehow comes from multinationals and they pool giant lots of coffee and but they actually come from great farms. A great farm, a great outturn of coffee at the mill will have a lot of low grades in it. And for farmers to succeed, they not only need to sell their good coffee at a high price, they need to sell their undergrades at a high price too, the best price they can. And it's actually a really important part. It's not just about, oh, my company bought this auction lot for $20 a pound and this farmer's going to do great. It's like, well, how many bags did you buy at $20 a pound, and where did the rest of his coffee go, or her, and what value did they get for it? So that's sort of my ideological underpinnings on looking at lower grade coffee. So I'm going to switch to the macro. So as we switch over to the macro, I thought I'd start with the lower grade. This is T grade coffee. And what's interesting about this, as you look at it and you think, if you roast your own coffee, that hopefully you would not receive coffee that looked like this, is that it comes from the same outturn as this right here, which is the AA. So when you're talking about grading, you're only talking about screen size. It's presumed that you're going to have a better cup from wholesome, healthier looking, larger, heavier, denser beans. It's not always true. I found over time that surprisingly in Kenya, the different grades can have a different taste. And yet in countries like Colombia, we combine essentially what would be in Kenya the AA, 18 plus, and the ABs, the 17/64 screen. So it's 17/64 of an inch, which is what you're looking at here, AB. We combine those and feel like we get a better cup. And yet in this past season with the Kenya cupping, I found some AAs, ABs, and PBs from the same outturn cupped very differently. So I was surprised by that. And there's people who will tell you there's specific reasons why that will happen in particular crop years. So, C grade. In Kenya we have AA, AB, and C. And those are three grades that are considered like export quality along with PB. And here in fact you'll see some P-berry in here if you'll look. So, and I think C grade ends up with a lot of P-berry in it, as well as along a lot of these here is a sort of tri-bean where there's 3 coffee beans in a cherry. But T grade is actually light coffee that's removed from the parchment. And as you can see, it's sort of malformed, withered. Let's say in the case right here, you see something sort of affecting the health of that fruit. A lot of withering, a lot of like drought-like looking beans. So in a sense, well, I think that technically C grade could have a great cup, although it hasn't always been my experience. AB definitely can sometimes, and of course AA. T is a whole different thing. And over here, let me scooch over. This is TT. This is like a higher grade of T. And by the way, I'm just saying the letter T. And it involves a lot of ears. These are called ears here, where you get these sort of hollowed out shells. And there's another small part that fits in there, which I think you're seeing in the T grade, but the ears seem to make it into the TT because they're heavier and weightier. And there's actually some pretty sound coffee in there with the TT. Here's another anomaly in Kenya. This is E grade. It's elephants, and they're sort of malformed, oversized coffee. Some of them like this. You see it's a really strange sort of misshapen form. They're kind of rounded, but they're not pea berries, of course. And I am not sure why we tend to see these more in Kenya than anywhere else. But that's the case, and some people actually sort of prize them. I found they generally have more variation and have more defect cups. So just like the C grade, there's nothing intrinsically wrong with the smaller bean. It could be a very good, healthy cherry that had a nice, well-developed fruit and seed. And yet, when you start to mix and it's more less homogeneous, then you tend to throw some off cups. Here we're back at the AB, and just to note, since this coffee wasn't, this is straight from the auction, it didn't go through hand picking. You see an obvious defect here that would need to be removed in hand picking. So the system in Kenya is unusual. It's a great marketing system. One flaw of it is that, I would say, for quality, is that all this coffee is milled, the sort of primary dry milling out of parchment, which I showed you before, but this is parchment coffee here, before it's been hulled into the green bean here. And then the coffee is marketed, and depending on the amount of time it takes, that coffee is now sitting in green bean form, waiting to find a home, be exported, and then there's a sort of final hand picking that your exporter will or will not do as part of the service in order to upgrade the coffee from what comes through the auction. But the same is true for second window marketing, meaning direct purchase that doesn't go through the auction, is the coffee has to be milled to be sold, unless you can make special arrangements. And those rules are changing now in Kenya. But what that means is that the clock's kind of ticking once a coffee's out of parchment, because parchment's a protective layer. The good thing for selling coffee is you know how many off grades you have. So if this is your AB here, you've already removed all this. So the normal loss that the dry miller takes from having bought coffee and then finding out that a lot of it is this stuff, is the T grade, is actually sort of absorbed by the market, separated into different coffees at different values. In different years, your percentage of AA, AB, PB, C, all the screen sizes will be different. And that results in a really different value. So you can have a big crop, but actually lack the more expensive, the coffee that buyers are going to reward with higher prices. And generally in Kenya, the auction prices go much higher in years when there's just scarcity from the desirable regions. It's a system that pits buyers against each other for specific coffees that they think are better, and that's good for farmers in a way. So I think I covered the different grades, but I'll tell you the surprise, just in case it wasn't clear. These are all from the same outturn. This is a highly desirable cooperative society called Kangocho, and this T grade, the C, the AA, and the AB, as well as the other ones I showed, are all from the same outturn. So your same outturn produces a range of qualities of coffee, and your co-op or farmer needs to get a good price for all of them in order to make their sort of books work. It's not just about selling the more desirable grades at the best price. It's about selling everything. So let me show you another big part of the Kenya system, which I don't get to see very often because it's about undergrade coffee. There's some other parts of the Kenya coffee trade that are terribly important to farmers and to people who trade in the coffee, and are kind of areas that a lot of specialty buyers would not participate in or know much about. And I don't pretend to know much about a lot of this. I just like to ask questions and listen. So there are things here that I could definitely be wrong on. But anyway, this is MBUNI coffee. MBUNI is spelled MBUNI, and MBUNI is a natural coffee. A lot of times farmers will come to a mill and pick out unripe coffee or overripe coffee before they submit it to their co-op. They take that home and dry it themselves rather than have the co-op process it, and it is sold as MBUNI. I think there's some other ways that MBUNI is traded and sourced, but so this is basically Kenya natural. And the problem with it is it's not going to be a super high quality natural because a lot of it is underripe coffee. But MBUNI is a big part of the trade, and there's certain buyers and buying countries that actually really like MBUNI coffee, the Kenya naturals. And this here is called MBUNI Heavy, and it gets a higher price in the auction, just meaning that it's gone through gravity separation, and this is the good stuff. And MBUNI Light, I couldn't find a sample of. And by the way, these samples come from Kenya Coffee, who helped me source them out of their extensive library of coffees waiting for auction or in recent auctions. So this is actually what I want to talk about a little bit more. It looks pretty bad, I'm sure. Excuse me. But this is called UG1. This is ungraded heavy coffee. I thought that UG meant undergrade, but I'm told that it means ungraded. So this is coffee that came from poor quality parchment somewhere in the trade. Some farmer grew this, and it gets collected and sold as UG. And this is UG1. This is actually the good stuff. This is the heavier, more dense, larger bean, ungraded. And in the ungraded, you can find a really big range of qualities. So a lot of traders really actually do well with ungraded coffees. And the other is UG2. And UG2 is pretty nasty. As you can see, it has a lot of chips and small pieces, and kind of what in other countries is called triage. Triage is actually coffee that you may sweep off the floor of the mill. It's everything. And actually I can show you something even really atrocious here, which I would just never drink. These are the, let me find my label here. This is the what's removed, the defects removed from the hand picking actually of MBUNI Heavy. And here you see a lot of black beans. Black beans produce these stinker cups that are just really atrocious. In fact, if I'm looking at the right part of the image, I'm trying to focus in here, that's like all black bean. Let me check my focus. Yeah, that's like 100% black bean. But I think the key here is that all coffee, and by the way, this is actually a pod. It's a very small natural coffee pod that hasn't been milled at all. But the point here, you know, and I think I used to take this point a little differently, is that all coffee finds a home. And I used to maybe feel a little moralistic about that, like, well, here's where the shit goes. But basically, this part of the trade, especially the UGs and the off grades, these are called grinders in Kenya at least. And grinders is coffee that is sold ground. So the consumer never sees this. I used to think it was sort of fanciful that, you know, in specialty coffee they have whole bean coffee, and oh, I buy whole bean coffee. That sounds kind of trite, but it's actually pretty sound reasoning in a way, because if you're buying ground coffee, this is what you could be buying. You never see it. It's just brown powder, and grinders is a huge business. And those are buyers that will be looking worldwide for where do they get the best coffee that they can turn brown and sell. It's not really about, it's about the least worst coffee generally. And they're sort of looking globally at it. So I guess in that regard, and with my original point, is how do farmers do well given that they have to sell all the coffee? The sort of inverted logic here is that really, if you cared about farmers and wanted to do them right by giving them a base fair price, this is the coffee you should be buying fair trade. This is the coffee where it would make the most sense, because it would go to the heart of the undifferentiated commodity market that that trades in coffee basically as an exchangeable substance, and will go anywhere in the world to get it. So if you wanted to help the largest amount of coffee farmers in the world, it'd be this product, not the sort of pampered sort of micro-lot coffee product. That said, I'm not advocating for that. I'm just pointing out that, or saying there's something wrong with micro-lots, etc. You should really try our micro-lots, by the way. I'm just saying that this is another face of coffee here that we don't talk about, because it doesn't have the imagery and the romance of going to a particular farm and meeting a particular farmer who might speak your language and you can communicate, and they will produce a lot of coffee for you and stuff. But this is sort of the heart of coffee production in the world. Grinders. Okay, well, thanks for looking closely with me at good and bad coffee samples. These are our parchment samples from Rwanda. I would also like to thank my co-evaluator here. She did a great job here. What do you think? Okay, well, this is the problem with using dogs in coffee evaluation. They just get distracted by everything. Anyway, Thanks.